My grandfather used to say, take a lifetime to build a reputation, take a month to destroy it. So, if you do bad work, that gets around. If you do good work, it's harder to get around, but it gets around too. So, over the years, we've just started with gaining the trust of a couple contractors that do small parking lots. And then we gained a couple of trust of some builders that did roads. And then we we put a lab in and we were able to do state work so we could, do the highways and the county roads. So just a slow progression of trying to, master everything we can in our business. I actually have more concrete employees than I do blacktop employees. I don't like telling too many people that, but we got into a bind where we had so much work and all we were doing was waiting on subcontractors all day long. And we were waiting on the sidewalks to get poured. We were waiting on the curves to get poured. We were waiting on all this stuff to get done. So we just said, we're going to do it ourselves.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Your Business, Your Next Level. I'm your host, Eunicia Peret, and today I have Ryan Riegler in the studio with me. He's the Vice President of Riegler Blacktop, a large construction company with a lot of millions in terms of revenue. I'm not going to go into that because I didn't get Ryan's permission to go into it. If he wants to go and share that with you, he will. However, here's something that I absolutely love about Ryan. He's obviously a married man and a father of 3 children. He has 33 years in the construction industry and has built, in essence, an empire in that world. And he's very well positioned to talk about the trials, tribulations, and the things he's learned. So stay tuned and help me welcome Ryan to the show. Ryan, welcome. So happy to have you here with us.
No, thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
I love it. Talk to us a little bit about, you've been in construction for a long time. Is that where you started your career, or did you pivot from somewhere? And how did you get to build such a massive empire in real estate? In construction.
Well,
tied to real estate.
No problem. Well, got it honestly. We're a 3rd generation blacktop family. My grandfather started our company in 1954. He had 4 sons. He ended up passing away in 1988. And when he passed away, he either left business shares or some personal assets. And 2 of the brothers took the business and 2 of the brothers took personal assets. So my dad and my uncle are the 2nd generation. They ran it from 88 up until just about 5 to 10 years ago. They both started to kind of phasing out. My dad more phased out than my uncle, but both in the business, both were basically the bedrocks with my grandmother for many, many years. Then grandma passed away about 10, 15 years ago. And when grandma passed away, we started getting into the 3rd generation where we have 5 people. We have my older brother, RJ, my younger sister, Christy. That's on my side of the family. And then my other side of the family has Michael. He is our president. And the other son is Dan. He is our vice president also. And he's also an engineer. So we went to with that generation, there's a lot of problems. Typically, a lot of companies don't get past the 3rd generation. My uncle had a good idea. The University of Cincinnati was offering a family business class, a transition family business training. A lot of local businesses went and did it. I don't know if you're familiar with Graders or Natorps or La Rosas or any of these Cincinnati big businesses, but a lot of family businesses have gone through there, helped out with family business planning, kind of creating our tree for the next generation, trying to figure out the best way to transfer shares from one generation to the next with the least amount of tax liability, things like that. One of the biggest things that we had ever did with the company was in around 2005. We started thinking about building an asphalt plant. To that date, we were only a buyer of blacktop. We were just an everyday purchaser, just like everybody else. But we kept on getting beat by 10 or 15% on all of our bids by people that had asphalt plants around us. So we did our research and, we took a big plunge and built our first asphalt plant in 2005. And we just finished building our 2nd asphalt plant, broke ground on it in the spring, started making blacktop right at the end of the year. So we're about to break ground, like a new breaking in 2026 for the new asphalt plant. So when I came back to the business, I have been here since I was 13 summers. A lot of kids went to water parks. A lot of kids did a lot of other things. I cleaned parking lots and seal coated parking lots when I was younger. And, when I went to college, I think my dad and them had about 15 to 20 employees. When I came back from college, we had somewhere from 20 to 30 employees. So we're talking around 2002 ish, have about 30 employees. And today we have almost 200.
That's amazing. That explains a little bit about the size of your company and the size of the empire. That sounds like you're operating beautifully with other family members. Tell us a little bit about that, Ryan. So not only are you operating a business that is now being run by the third generation, you're also doing it in collaboration with individuals that, yes, while they are part of the family, they're not, it's a lot that goes into it. How have your uncle and your father been able to make that work and make it work successfully? What do you think is their secret sauce, or was their secret sauce?
Well, I saw my father and my uncle have their fair share of arguments. There's no doubt about that. The family business, you're going to get plenty of that. And we have our fair share in our third generation as well. One thing I think that's a little bit unique for our situation compared to the other Riegler family members that we have, my dad and uncle were always in business together. So they did business things together. Where I grew up, my dad and my uncle did a small development. They kept the back two lots and, they built houses right next to each other. So, I grew up next to the other side of the family and more so brothers, and they have a sister also, but they're more like brother and sister than they are. I know they're cousins, but it's a close family relationship there. So I think that helped out tremendously with our generation. We're also fairly similar in age. I think we go from 45 to 51, maybe 52 in there, somewhere in that range. So everybody's within the same, work career age and same area of life, where we're going to be moving forward. I think we still have quite a couple decades of solid, continual growth and trying to figure out what we're going to do with the next generation and where we go with there. I have a son, and it's a fourth generation. He's only been there 2 years, but he's only 19. So, and then my cousin Danny has a couple kids that are a little bit younger. They're 13 and 11, and they're starting to work a little bit in the summer. So we haven't done much conversation with fourth generation planning yet. Still trying to figure out the tax implications because, every year we get a little bit bigger. We almost have to get more life insurance to cover if somebody died or something like that. So when you get into a bigger company and when you have so many people involved, we have buyout, sellout agreements, and every couple of years, those have to be addressed.
Being in the world that you're describing when this podcast, well, it's not about Excelstra. Every now and then examples come out. And what you're describing it's a beautiful situation, Ryan, of the things that you were blessed with and obviously worked really hard to achieve. And that need for proper planning, not just when it comes to the estate planning side of the world, which is very much needed, but also how do you think about the next generation? How do you enable them? How do you minimize the tax liability? That's something that we see all the time. As a matter of fact, I literally just got off the phone with an attorney who said, I hope that you don't mind me talking about the differences between CPAs that are more of financial CPA versus management CPAs. And the financial CPAs, they pretend to talk about tax strategies. However, the things that they talk about tax strategies are things that should be non-negotiables. They're passed on as being tax strategies, but things such as, your home office. Well, gee, if you work in your home office, it's table stakes.
Mm-hmm.
There's a big difference when we start moving into the business ownership and into the entrepreneurs that are doing a really good job. Tax strategy becomes a totally different ball of wax.
And just to add on to that point, just a tiny bit, during the classes we were at University of Cincinnati, tax accountant and lawyer, very, very big to make sure that you have those and have ones that everybody likes and can get along with. Second generation lawyers and accountants might not work with third generation people. Fortunately for us, our accountant was in first generation and second generation daughter. So she just took over and she's same age as us. We all get along with her. And then our lawyer is still second generation lawyer, but I don't think there's anybody in our family that thinks we get any better sound advice from any human on earth than we do from that man. So as long as he's around, he's still going to be our lawyer. So, but he's a little bit older. We're actually just in talks with him to maybe start working in a transition that he recommends. Maybe somebody, he's an outside opinion all the time. And he goes through a lot of different companies, a lot of different businesses. And, if we all trust him, we would also trust his input who he thinks should take his place. At least we're going to have a sit down
Here's
with
my
that person.
guidance. Here's my guidance on that. Having spoken with attorneys that actually bought and sold properties and bought and sold companies, some in manufacturing, some in construction, and it's very interesting that we're talking about an attorney that buys, for example, manufacturing companies. One of the things that has come out in multiple of those types of conversations is figure out, yes, you have the team, and that's amazing. In most cases, the team is incentivized by, obviously nobody works for free. Figure out, how do you get an unbiased opinion in there?
Yeah.
Because you were talking about the different generations, and you've been very lucky and blessed for them to get along with each other. And yet when you interject and you put in an unbiased person or an unbiased team that can help understand what are the drivers that are driving everybody on your extended team in terms of the advisors, it's very interesting to see how in some cases, hopefully not the people that you work with, but in some cases they become a little squirmy
Yeah.
because there are certain bones that are hidden, and it's better for nobody else to find out where those are. Well, when you're working with somebody that's unbiased, those bones being uncovered could go really a long way for the
Yeah.
generations, the future generations in the business.
And I mean, I think that one thing is with our businesses, there's nothing hidden that I know of. Everything's an open book with us. So, we go
Good.
through financials weekly, monthly together. We go through quarterlies, we go through year end. I mean, we have a CPA we have a CFO too. So another step forward that made us go from, 30 to 200 people, we hired a very competent HR person. Before, all of that headache was on the ownership and all of the medical and all of the hiring and all of the dental and, all that stuff that you don't have time for. You're running a business, you don't have time for that stuff. So that would be another thing that I would recommend. Our HR guy, he's a former military guy. He's in his 30s. He beat out 50 people, and our CFO beat out 30 people. And we hired them outside the family. My cousin had a pretty good line. You need to go look and hire people. We don't know how to do that stuff. So if we're going to do it, we need to hire people that are the best at it and have them come in and do the best job they can. And that's something you can't skimp on pretty much. So we went through a long process to get to those two individuals, but that's been a catapult for, growth without a doubt.
It's huge. And especially when you're able to go outside of the family to bring in that thought leadership, it keeps a fresh perspective. It truly does. And it provides you guys with some of those external ideas. And of course, they're committed to their job, but they're not married, if you will, because they're not part of the family. So
Yeah.
it's definitely required and advised that you bring in that fresh perspective. So I'm so happy that you guys are doing that. Talk to us a little bit more, Ryan. You were mentioning about the family and the business planning and the business succession. That's something that a lot of individuals struggle with, especially if they don't know what are they going to do with the business. Are they going to pass it on to a next generation? Are they not? How have you guys gone through, obviously third generation looking at fourth? How have you gone through and thought about what will that look like, especially not knowing whether or not your children are going to be excited and want to take over the business someday?
Yeah. So the second generation after my grandmother passed away, it was 50-50. So it was actually balanced, and, no side has more power than the other side of the family. Now, our generation, we have 3 in and they have 2 in. So, the math doesn't work out that way. On our end, we can't do anything about the shares. The shares are what they are. But on a business idea, though, you have 5 people doing a job. So 5 people need to be getting paid for what they do, not just because of what your last name is. You should be getting paid for what you do. And your shares and what's left over at the end of the day is really what's left over after everyone's paid. So, that's one thing. We set a business plan and a model of what we kind of wanted to go by. My brother has his master's in math and he used to be a school teacher. And he came up with a 40-40-20 plan for our business, and 40 is taxes, 40 is reinvestment, and 20 is distribution. So if you think of not salary or bonuses, but your dividend, if you think about your profits at the end of the year, 40% we put towards tax, 40% we put towards new equipment, new purchases, new buys. We were able to pay cash for our asphalt plant. which was a pretty significant amount of money to be able to pay cash for. But we've been doing this
Absolutely.
plan. We've been doing this plan for 20 years. So we've had a pretty good nest egg in our bank account, and we don't take loans on anything. We pay cash for it anymore. So anything we have is fully owned. So that was a big deal
That's
too, was getting everybody. That was a big deal at the family business planning, was talking about salaries, roles. It's really beneficial. They found out that one family member not really be over top of any other family member, because you're an owner, you feel like you're an owner, so you don't want somebody else on top of you, on top of your feet, is checking up on you. So I have a division I run. My cousins have divisions they run. My brother has his area. My sister has theirs. And, as long as you're running your division and everything's great, then shouldn't have any problems. But, and that's why you meet a lot and you talk a lot. And they also, the hardest part that we found was talking, getting people together, the time. So like the school makes a time every month that you have to come, and they provide lunch and breakfast, and you're there for 4 or 5 hours once a month or something. You do that for, can't remember how many months it was. It was like a year and a half or something we did it for, I think. But it was, just to get in there and have those uncomfortable conversations. What if your dad dies? What if your uncle dies? What if your brother dies? Do I have to come up with all these millions because I didn't have life insurance on my brother? So we had to get life insurance to cover any buy-sell agreements if somebody passed away. That was a big safety valve. With the way the taxes are, you don't want to have to come up with all that money all at once to pay for something that, the value is something that you don't have in your pocket. So the insurance was a big idea. The plan for the finances, hiring good people where we needed it. But we also did some self-awareness. Our CFO came in and he did a couple self-awareness, like company dissection models that, I think he called it SWOT. I can't remember what the acronym stood for, but it was based.
Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
There you go. There you go. So we did some SWOT training. So we've done that a few times. And, I think the most important thing is everybody that is working with us is towards the same goal. We all come to work every day with purpose. Every one of us, besides my sister, have kids, but she's got dogs. So she's okay. But her and my mom they're dachshunds, and they're the sisters and they get along great. But yeah, she just hasn't found the right man yet. But everybody else has got these goals with their kids in mind. And when I talk to my guys, I talk to them about coming to work every single day with purpose. Whatever it is, you just come with purpose. My purpose is to make sure that every one of my guys get home safely and that we provide a good job for our customer. We don't skimp anything. My grandfather used to say, take a lifetime to build a reputation, take a month to destroy it. So, if you do bad work, that gets around. If you do good work, it's harder to get around, but it gets around too. So, and, over the years, we've just started with gaining the trust of a couple contractors that do small parking lots. And then we gained a couple of trust of some builders that did roads. And then we gained then we put a lab in and we were able to do state work so we could, do the highways and the county roads. So just a slow progression of trying to, master everything we can in our business. I actually have more concrete employees than I do blacktop employees. I don't like telling too many people that, but we got into a bind where we had so much work and all we were doing was waiting on subcontractors all day long. And we were waiting on the sidewalks to get poured. We were waiting on the curves to get poured. We were waiting on all this stuff to get done. So we just said, we're going to do it ourselves. And we went out and hired one of the best guys in the area. And that's just gone through the roof itself too. So, and then having my cousin Danny as an engineer come in, now we can do things from grass all the way to finish to maintenance, all the way from start to finish. And, the big box warehouses, the county roads, there's nothing that we don't do in our area, at least anymore.
So in other words, what I'm hearing, and I'd like to to summarize for our listeners, is whatever the business that you are in, if you can allow yourself the opportunity to just take a step back to understand where are those opportunities, where are those weaknesses, where are those threats, where are the strengths in terms of what it is that you have or you don't have at your disposal. And listen, a lot of people talk about SWOT and they do the SWOT however often they do it. And it's not meaningful for most people. They do it and it's just another exercise. If you do it with intention,
Yeah.
and Ryan, you were talking about just bringing in the right experts to have those conversations, it actually enables the business to grow into areas that historically may not have.
Well, having non-family members in the room when you're doing the SWAT, you get a non-family biased opinion too. As family members, you have your own opinions and your own bias. When you bring in non-family members, you get a lot different outside opinion too, in my opinion.
Absolutely. You
Mm.
get to look in the mirror through a different lens. The
Yep.
mirror is, maybe not convex, it's more concave or more flat.
Yep.
It provides sometimes a much better picture for sure. Talk to us a little bit, Ryan, about recreational fun and hobbies outside of work. And you're looking at this as a must. And I personally love that because what I've discovered is that when you take that time, you actually get to be that much better in whatever it is that you do at work and working in the business or on the business. Talk to us, how have you discovered that and how are you making it work, especially since you guys are very busy?
Well, one thing we do, go back, I want to tell you how I get vacation days, I guess. So back to the family planning business, I get 5 weeks basically a year. And, it's 25 days basically, and I can use them any way I want to. So my personal loves are hunting and fishing. I grew up on 200 acres. I moved to the city in my 20s. I was dying to get back out to the country. I live on 152 acres now. I hunt deer and turkey a lot. It's one of my big passions. And then one of my best friends lives down in Key Largo. So I go down and see him all the time, and we go catch big billfish and sailfish and tarpon and just about anything we can get out of the ocean down there, we go after. So, and then, we live in Kentucky. Florida's my second home. I don't own anything down there. I don't know if I ever will or not, but because I like a lot of parts of Florida too. I just don't like one spot anymore. But Kentucky's home, but Florida's second home for sure. And actually, I get my turkey hunting. I actually go all over the world for my turkey hunting. There's 6 breeds of turkey, and I've got 3 of them, and I'm going after 2 this year in Texas and Wyoming, and I got to go to Mexico for the last one. So that's my hobbies.
Nice.
And I coach football too.
And you coach football. So in other words, make it intentional.
Oh yeah.
Go back to, even if we do have a lot of entrepreneurs who maybe don't have partners in the business and it may be harder. One of the things that we got challenged and I got challenged with early on was, if you need to go somewhere, what happens? And so we needed to make sure that we had the right things in place so that if I'm gone, things still run. And it's the same thing
Yep.
for other entrepreneurs. And the crux is, it has to be intentional. You
All right.
have to be okay saying that you need the time and you're going to give yourself the time. And Ryan, I appreciate you sharing the example of how you guys are doing it.
Well,
Go ahead.
and if you hire the right people, when you leave, you can trust that's getting done. You know what I mean? So if you're trying to overload everything and do everything yourself, I won't bring up a guy's name, but I have a buddy of mine who runs a small restaurant business, and I don't ever see him getting any bigger because they don't ever trust anybody else. They don't trust anybody around the cashier. They don't trust anybody who get the groceries. I'm like, you have to get other people involved or it's just not going to grow for you. You know what I mean? So you have to be able to let go a little bit. You still want to have your, oversight on everything, but you got to be able to let go a little bit.
100%. That is so true. Ryan, one of my favorite, it's gone by so quickly. And I want to make sure that we get to at least one more question before we lose you today. One of the things that I love to ask our guests is, what is one of your biggest failures or perceived failures or regrets in life? And what did that teach you? We find that this in itself has huge power for our listeners. It uncovers all sorts of things that maybe they're battling with. What would you say is one of those bigger failures or regrets in your life?
Well, I have 3 children. I'm divorced. So my oldest 2 are 22 and 19, and I'm remarried, and I've been with my second wife for over 13 years now. I would say my first divorce was probably my biggest failure. Not failure as a parent or anything, just failure in marriage. I would say when I was younger, money drove me, but we didn't have it. And I had to find hours to go I did side jobs. I tried every which way I could to make as much money as I possibly could. Probably had my eye off the ball a little bit too much. So that's why, when you brought up vacation and family time and doing things, make sure that this go around with my next kids that are, I'm always involved with them. When I did get divorced, my kids played sports, but I always coached so I could be around them. And It's funny. I brought up coaching. I've been coaching for almost 10 or 12 years now. I have more enjoyment coaching other kids than I have in coaching my own kids, if that makes any sense. It's just wild. Other kids need help too. Let's put it that way. Other kids need help too. And, I'm happy to help. So
It sounds like you have a heart of gold and one of wanting to see people around you succeed and successful. Ryan, we've had a great conversation about a lot of different topics today. Is there any one particular takeaway or inkling that you would like to leave with our audience today?
I always tell them, so I'm a coach and I've got 2 boys, so I'm always inspirational. I'm always looking for ways to push them. And I always, people inspire me. I love Dana White. One of his quotes was, if you want something and you work for it and you wake up every day and you keep working at it and you keep working at it and you keep working at it, someday it will be attainable. The consistency and getting up is probably the hardest part of being successful. Wake up every day. There's days I don't want to do it. I go to the gym at 4:30 in the morning because I got no other time of the day that I can do it. So, sometimes you have to find time in the day to do it, but consistency and relentless consistency. That's what I would say. And if you want something bad enough, you'll get it. I wanted a farm. I found a way to do it. I didn't want to keep buying blacktop from my competitors. So we found a way to get around that. Always find a way.
I love that you talked about relentless consistency. I get asked a lot by business owners, by aspiring entrepreneurs on what is the key to success. And sometimes those same individuals talk about how hard it is and how much they've tried this or that or the other. And what I hear more times than not is excuses versus taking whatever it is that life throws their way to say, they get to do it. They change the perspective in the way that they look at it to still pick themselves up every morning, just like you said, and do the things that are hard first, and just do the things that are hard, because the reality is nobody has achieved massive success without stepping into what is hard first. And so I appreciate that you brought that forth, because I feel like sometimes people go, yeah, we know exactly what Eunicia is going to say. It's all about just keep at it and go lean into the hard stuff. And it's real.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And if you think about it, if you're consistent, you start something. Today you did this and you learned this. And then tomorrow, if I came to work, you're climbing a ladder, you're climbing a ladder plateau every day. And you just keep climbing, So I tell my kid, I was like, you're not a foreman yet because you don't know how to be a foreman yet. I said, you need to learn how to do things underneath people. You need to get in the foreman's right pocket and you need to learn every single thing he's doing. And I said, if you come every day, I said, someday along the way, you will be where you want to be. And I don't know what that day will be. Nobody knows what that day will be. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings. But if you keep working at it, you'll get to where you want to be. Somewhere along the way, you'll get there.
I love that. And I also love the fact that you mentioned about how the conversations that you're having with your son, because way too many business owners, they just want to give it to the child. And what ends up happening is without that individual, that young adult wanting it, really wanting it and working for it, it's not going to happen. It's just going to literally be a ball that gets dropped at some point in time. So it sounds like you've discovered, obviously it has been handed down to you or passed on to you. You're teaching the future generations to do the same. And I'm so happy to hear that. Ryan, we appreciate you. I appreciate you for being here with us today. And as you're listening out there, I know that Ryan added a ton of value because, listen, he's shared some ideas and some things that most people will never talk about. They want to keep them for themselves. So do us a favor. We want your feedback. We want your review. Hopefully this was deserving of a 5 stars. More importantly, however, we want to hear what was the at least one takeaway from today's episode with Ryan. He's given his time. He's added a ton of value. So go in, give us that review and let us know. And we'll make sure that we talk about more of the things that you find important. And until next time, stay tuned for your next episode of Your Business, Your Next Level.
Thank you for joining us on Your Business, Your Next Level podcast, where it is all about helping you make more, keep more, and elevating your business to the next level. To learn more, make sure you head over to www.podcast.extelstra.com and don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show. Again, that's podcast.extelstra.com. Until next time, thanks for listening.